All right. Hello, y'all. This is going to be another beautiful Mental Projector episode. I'm so pumped because I'm talking to Rose, who is a 6'2" Mental Projector. And we actually met in the summer of 2020. So it's been almost 2 years. And you did my first chart reading. I had gone all one line, and so then we've just kept in touch ever since. It's amazing. And she powerfully combines astrology, moon magic, human design. She's all about new paradigm business for goddess soulpreneurs, modern mystics, and intuitive leaders. How beautiful is that? I just love it. So inside this episode, we'll talk about business and about Rose's experience as a mental projector. So hi, Rose.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is honestly like such a dream. Getting to hang out and chat mental projector life and things is just so good. So good. And I still can't really believe that it's been like 2 years or whatever it's been since we first connected. And in some ways it feels like it's been way longer. And then in other times I'm like, snap the fingers, it could have been yesterday that we first we're both simultaneously geeking out about like connecting with another mental projector and being able to like talk on that level of, oh my God, yes, like this is what I feel. Do you feel that too? Oh my God, this is amazing. Yes. So it's like, even though I was like reading your chart for you, I feel like we were still also talking on that level of just finally finding someone who got it and understood it. And
yes,
like,
absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yes, that sigh of relief. That's exactly how I feel when I talk to other mental projectors, and especially you, because it's like, okay, I can just be my mental projectorness, and you get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so beautiful. Yeah. It's crazy. And I'm really grateful. This is one reason I'm really grateful for social media, because I mean, you're in New Zealand, I'm in Texas. There's no way we would have ever met in real life.
Exactly. It's mind-blowing, right? Like that we can be literally on opposite sides of the world. And even just the fact that like we're in 2 completely different days, right? Like as we're recording this, I mean, like our having to kind of like work it out in advance of like, okay, well, for me it's going to be Thursday and for you it's going to be Wednesday, and all of that sort of technology and what that's opened up in terms of online business, and also being able to connect with other people who are on that same journey or similar journey, or I love it so much. I am such a fan of what social media has facilitated, obviously, and we were chatting before we pressed record on all of this anyway, about the kind of the underbelly side of social media. But at the same time, like I do truly believe, like looking at it through the human design lens, that it has just been the most incredible gift and opportunity and blessing. I mean, the fact that pretty much I feel like every single person I've ever worked with, that's come into my world, it has been that connection through the online space, and they've found out about their human design through the online space and all of these things. So for me, it's just like, yes, please, and more. Like, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, now we didn't discuss this before, but now I'm curious if this like opening up is in astrology. Like, can you look at the chart? So you were just talking too about the north and south node aspect of.
I think definitely there are things that could be its whole own probably like episode, but definitely there are aspects of where we are at collectively in terms of astrology and cosmic weather essentially that's going on all around us, that we're all experiencing, that are leading us towards these ways of being more connected, more awakened or opened up to things that are, everything touches everything, right? And so the fact that, these are really, really ancient systems and modalities and understandings that are now either being amplified for people who've been around them for quite a long time, or kind of the door is open now for a lot more people to very easily come across it and access it and dip their toes in it. And also in a way that is we can all do it in our own pace and our own alignment. And this is probably something that is a big part of the way I am called to teach about and talk about human design, is in that way of it's accessible for people. They can, because I know from like the people, amazing people I've worked with, that all it takes for someone sometimes is to hear, oh, you're a manifesting generator. And that is their entire life trajectory. Like that's all they ever need to know, right? They don't need to know any more than that, because that suddenly unlocks their superpowers and they can go off and be their mani-gen goodness and magic and multi-passionate and multi-hyphenate and just the permission slip to be that. Whereas for other people, they want to get into the study, they want to get into the rabbit hole, they want to go deep. I mean, I know you're nodding along because like you're like, yep. That
one's me.
Yeah. And in that way, doing the more like sort of what's the right word, like kind of longer term studying or training or certifications or whatever it might be that aligns for that person is going to be the path. And I think, you know, even just 5 years ago, that was probably more or less the only way people could connect to human design, was going down that very formal certification route. And now it's like the possibilities are so multifaceted. It's like this beautiful human design kaleidoscope of however much or in depth or the language that resonates for you. And that's something that I'm just so fucking passionate about.
Yes.
Accessibility is what I'm so passionate about. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's been fun watching different creators and finding new creators and how they teach about it or what programs they have, and just seeing their design come to life inside of their business.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah,
it's really fun. So
this is like two defined ajnas and throats that are just like off and fucking running, right? Like we're both just like straight out the gate, like
this is how I roll though. So it's gonna be what it is. So I really appreciate you talking about all of that. And yeah, I feel like we're just gonna have to talk again and like nerd out on astrology, because that's one, it's so fascinating to me. I love astrology, but it doesn't click for me as much as human design. And so I love learning about it more. It's starting to come together a little more, but yeah, so I think it'd be so fun.
It's been a real interesting like experiment within my own kind of journey as well, because human design for me, so with my 6-2 profile, right, like that 2 line of you just know what you know and you can't explain what you know, and you can't like really put it into words around like why I know this stuff. It just has come here with me in this lifetime. And that for me was human design. It was like, as soon as I came across it, it was more like remembering something that I already knew. And that was a very weird, for want of a better word, experience, because I'd had other things that kind of came to me very lightly and effortlessly, but this was really the first time I'd had something that was like, it was more like deja vu every time I kind of like came across something or learned something or read something or listened to something. Astrology for me, I will say like comes lightly, but I feel I have to study it a lot more than I ever have felt I needed to with human design. So it's kind of an interesting like looking at these things and still appreciating that my 2 line kind of goes like, yeah, astrology is something that we're very comfortable with straight out the gate. But there's a lot more of a kind of active process of learning. And I think that's where my 6 line comes in, that loves the learning. And astrology is something that I'll happily nerd out on, but it's not that sort of, it's not like, it's kind of an active learning process, I think is what is the best way of describing it. Whereas for human design, it was just like, it was all already there and I just needed to kind of like polish off the dust or whatever, you know.
Yes.
Whatever visualization.
Yes. No, that makes complete sense to me, because I had the same feeling and it was so weird. And now like I'm remembering, I think we talked about this in the early days, because it was so weird. It was like, how do I know this, but I don't know it? And then, yeah, the more I learn, the more it just makes sense. And so I know astrology will come along. How long have you been in your experiment, as they say?
I always really struggle to answer this question, because I've been running my business in this form of like teaching and sharing about human design for just on about just over 2 years, like at the time we're recording this. However, I had been probably actively studying human design for a good 6 months before that. And then and really kind of just being fascinated and absorbed in it, and then it evolved into the kind of having that penny drop that it was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to actually be doing in my business. Oh, okay, all right, thanks universe, like I've got the memo now, like after repeated like sign after sign after sign after sign. But really probably for a good and this is where it starts to get a bit kind of like, you know, timelines get a bit strange, is that probably for about a good 2 to 3 years before that, I had been unknowingly living my design and deconditioning and doing all the things. So this is where it's kind of, in many ways, I feel like I was led to do the things in my life physically and get rid of the stuff that was the overwhelm, the burnout, the hustle culture, the, you know, in terms of the work I was doing was very, let's say like old paradigm entrepreneurship, like working 80-hour weeks and like just completely sacrificing myself for something that wasn't actually a passion of mine. It was just like, this is a logical business sort of venture, entrepreneurship venture, whatever you want to call it, and I am now going to nearly kill myself in the process of making it happen. And you know, so that had been my whole journey, and then had the kind of very universe coming along and basically going, well, if you're not going to listen, we are going to like put the wall up in front of you and your health is going to literally collapse, so you cannot do this anymore. And that was kind of my path of then getting into all the things of, okay, well, I have to actually be living a life that is the pace of life and the things I desire, and moving to somewhere that was very, you know, in the middle of nowhere, right beside the ocean, like all of these things that now I look back on, and I was basically being pushed by the universe to live this very mental projector life in the middle of nowhere, slowing right down, only working minimal hours, all of these things. And then it was like, once I'd actually got comfortable with that and embodied that, that was when the universe kind of like dropped the, you know, kind of the book in my lap, so to speak, of like, okay, now that you've slowed the fuck down, you can actually appreciate this. Because if I'd been given that 2-3 years before, I would have been, probably wouldn't have even registered, it wouldn't have even kind of permeated in, because I was so on that treadmill hamster wheel of like stress and adrenaline and overwhelm and burnout, that I knew something had to change, but like it needed to be that real line in the sand moment to actually get me to change first, and then I could be open to receiving the kind of, and this is now your next step, by the way.
Now that you're listening.
Yeah, it was almost like, now that we've got your attention and you're actually listening and you're not just completely spinning out, you know, now this is, and also a big part of that, again, you know, 6-line profile life, right, is that we have to go through the things that are the lived experience, so that's a huge part that informs the way I teach and share, and, you know, feel called to empower others, because I'm like, I know what it's like to have been through all of that, and to know that you're supposed to be doing something else, but can't seem to get out of that world. And then when it finally does happen, it can be fucking painful, like to actually have to make that shift and to get into that new kind of energy. Like, it's not comfortable. Like undefined root chakra, undefined sacral are like screaming, you should be doing more, you should be, you know, working harder, you have to prove yourself, you have to outdo everyone else in the room. And I know, like, we've talked about this any number of different times in terms of you've had a very similar experience, so it's like, yeah.
Do you ever feel like all of the open centers are yelling at you at one time?
Not so much now. definitely in the past. Yeah, that it just felt like everything was in burnout mode, but also in a very, like, I always find it's very hard for me to be in my body physically. And I know that's something that I don't know whether it is always the case for people who are, say, mental projectors or reflectors that have nothing activated in their sort of below the throat kind of, or in case of reflectors, nothing activated at all, right? But I've always found, like, yeah, it's like everything screaming and everything really overwhelmed in the past, but also being very, like, out of body with it. It's like kind of like my physical body is over here going through this experience, and my soul and my essence are kind of out here going, what the fuck is going on? And trying to, like, get the two to come together, which again was part of that embodiment and slowing down process, right? To actually go, it's safe to be in your body. Like, your body is now actually done the flushing out of all this stuff that wasn't yours, all this energetics that were misaligned and, really, needed to be flushed out, needed to have that process of deconditioning.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is something I don't think we really understand in the whole deconditioning process or the awakening process, or people who are brand new to human design. So I just feel like it's worth saying one more time, like, yes, it's painful and it's scary sometimes, but it's so worth it. And really, if you don't surrender, then it's just going to keep getting worse. You're going to have to surrender at some point. So
yeah, it will come back around, and then add in the layers of having a 3 in your profile, right? That you might think you've done all the work, and it will still come back around again through no fault of your own, or through nothing that you've actively, done or haven't done. It's just that genuinely, like, your lived experience is to be here to keep going through the layers. Or a little bit similarly with emotional authority, right? That it's like, it's not because you haven't done the work. It's not because you haven't tried hard enough. It's not because you're not committed. It's because there are literally things in your soul contract that are like, you're here to keep going through the layers of this experience and to keep deepening your understanding and embodiment of it. Because for some people, they're here to kind of go through it once and then move on, and that's the lessons that they were here to learn and embody. And then 3-line and emotional authority, just as 2 really quick examples. There are obviously other situations as well, but that's like keeping on going through, the layers, the deepening of the layers, because that is the needing to go to new depths, new explorations, new experiences. And a lot of people that I've worked with have kind of almost, they'll learn about that part of themselves, but then kind of forget about it once it actually gets into the day-to-day of living life. And I think it's easy to look at other people living their human design and forget that if they have a different human design, in terms of if they don't have emotional authority, if they don't have a 3 in their profile, they're here on a very different journey. And it's very, very unique to have to go through living those same sort of things. And it's not, especially when we're talking about soul business, right? That
right.
It's not that you haven't done enough work or enough inner work, or that you aren't committed. Obviously, like, the kind of, there's so much bandied around about consistency and like all of those things. And it's well, and it's like, well, no, like, it's not that you're not being consistent enough, not trying hard enough, not being dedicated enough to your soul journey. It's just like, literally, you could be doing everything perfectly and still be, the universe is like lining up your next opportunity to grow, right?
Yes.
And it might feel like shit at the time, but that's the opportunity and the invitation to step into, to go, how can you deepen and expand and like crack open more and all of those things.
Yes, that's so true. I always see it kind of like a spiral, like a spiral staircase. You're just going down deeper and deeper. And when you're talking about how you can show up and do everything right, quote unquote right, and be consistent, and I did that for most of last year, and the whole thing where you have to have a call to action and do all this stuff. And then I burnt out. I shut down at the end of last year, and just had zero energy. And then it's taken a while to come back. But I recently realized when I was looking back and reflecting on what was going on for myself in Instagram, there were some good things, but I didn't ever make a sale because of an Instagram post. I didn't get a new client because of an Instagram post. And so I, just got curious about that. Like, well, my energy was off. I mean, I'm a mental projector, and like, I feel like you do it so beautifully. I never get like sales ickiness from you at all. But I feel like I was kind of presenting that like a thirsty projector, like, hey, recognize me. I can do smart things. Don't you want to invite me?
Oh my God. Hashtag thirsty projector. That's got to be like the next. Yeah. It's like, oh, where's my invitation?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I realized. So technically I was doing everything right. Like my business coach at the time, who was into human design, but was also a manager, was telling me, you got to be consistent. You got to have a call to action. You got to do all these things. And so I was doing it because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And I wanted my business to grow, but that's not what I'm supposed to do. Like, I think mental projectors, like trying to sell themselves, it comes off very differently. But when I just stand up, like the most engagement I get is when I just share something. And
yeah,
like, here's some cool stuff I learned. And people like that.
And it is just, and I mean, this goes across the board for projectors as a whole, but this is something that I guess and you as well, we are aware and very heightenedly aware of the fact that a mental projector is vastly different to an energy projector. And so there does need to be that nuance within when we're talking about projectors in terms of how we show up, even within that broader strategy of, I like to speak to it as receiving invitations. And I know that a lot of the traditional projector-based strategy language is wait for an invitation. For me personally, the word wait felt restrictive. It felt heavy. It felt misaligned. And as soon as I was able to put my mindset around, really digging into what does that actually mean? What does it actually, what is the embodiment of that? And for me, reframing that to go, actually, it is my job to just be in the energy of receiving invitations. That for me was where it really clicked within my business, because I was like, yes, I'm not being thirsty projector styles, like, kind of like diving into people's DMs, like, hey, this is how you can work with me, right? Like, because that's the push and hustle and force and whatever, that so many projectors out there will be like, yep, we've been told to do that and it really did not work and I burnt out and all the things. But, getting into that energy of going, okay, it's my only job to show up and recognize myself every single day, like as a projector, and especially so as a mental projector, because it's like, and I always remember hearing something about, I think Ra said in one of his talks, like a mental projector is the most projectory projector that ever projected. So it's like, you have to like really like hone in on the, am I embodying projector life strategy, everything within every single moment, every facet of my life, right? And going, okay, I have to recognize myself first and foremost, because that's like step one of projector strategy, and it's often overlooked.
Right. Yes. Sorry, I got excited because
go.
It took forever for me to recognize that piece. And I think it was something Jess Field said at one point. Anyway, so I'm so glad that you said that, because it's about the self-recognition, number one, first and foremost. Absolutely. I think that's what was happening to me before. I'm like, somebody recognize me for something. And instead of
like putting it out as if it's like somebody else's job to do for you, but actually it's got to come from within. And that's where your energy then is in, or your aura, like that auric field is then in that alignment of receiving, because you're recognizing yourself and going, you know what, even if no one likes a single thing I put out today, I have recognized myself. for being amazing at this, and I see myself clearly, and I understand my gifts, my talents, my magic, and I am just going to share it and know that I've recognized myself, and it might take a while for it to find the people that it is supposed to be found by. But I trust that it is going where it needs to go.
Yes. Yes. That trust aspect too.
And then being open to the receiving. And we have to remember as well that, like, and this is part of, I guess, like soulpreneur business, right? Is that we are trusting that things do not have to happen in a linear time frame. And I mean, I will be the first person to say that my defined ajna can get all up in the linear timeframes and the logic. They're like, oh, well, I do this step and then this will happen and then this should happen and then this should happen. And then it's like the universe comes on and goes, nope, like non-linear. Like, trust that the podcast episode you did 2 years ago is going to be the thing that brings someone into your world like now, because they listened to a really old episode and then they've found you and then they've come and asked how they can work with you, or whatever the case may be. Rather than exactly like you were saying before about the Instagram posts that supposedly are going to be the thing that creates a sale. Like, yes, there is absolutely a world and an energy where that can happen. If we fully believe that that is how our business is going to work, we create our reality, right? So as a projector, if we believe that we are putting out something that is just like, yeah, I am the absolute fucking shit at this. Like, I am amazing at this. Like, I recognize myself for this. That is going to magnetize the people who are going to be like, oh, like, what's this about? Like, you know, like, oh, I like this. This is, you know, this is a perspective that I really get on board with. I can, you know, feel the vibe of, let me explore how else, like what else this person has, like, let me click the link in their bio. You know, it's like, that's projector business, right? Is it's just going like, hey, here's my like billboard with what I've shared. If you want to come on in, like, here's where you can, like, welcome to my Zen Den lounge. You might want to go over there and browse. You might want to go over there and like look at my website. Here's how you could literally like book in with me and pay me. Like, it's like, we want it to be efficient, right? Like, we want people to be able to find you and literally pay you within the space of seconds if that is aligned for them. And that's probably just like projector business strategy in a nutshell, right? Like,
so perfect. And you know what? I realized that exact thing happened on Sunday. I was live on TikTok and people were commenting like, I have great lives on TikTok. My Instagram lives have always been boring and like nobody talks to me. And so someone's asking questions and then, I mean, I don't realize they disappear. It's just all of a sudden I see an email notification that someone created or like booked me for a reading. And then she pops back in the comments and says, I just booked a reading. I'm so excited. Like, that's projector magic right there.
Yeah, that is amazing. That is exactly it, right? That you're just doing your thing, rocking it, like not worrying about the strategy of like, have I done, you know, whatever you're supposed to do for a live video. Like, I just know I love this vibe. I love my community here. You know, like that is just such an aligned way of doing things that's so effortless. It's so easy, right? And that's, compare that to the energy you were just talking about before of doing all the things and then burning out. Yeah, and just going, this is not, but again, 3-line profile life, maybe for whatever reason that was part of it, you know, in terms of understanding at that deeper embodied level, because now you in turn hand that permission slip and that gift off to other people who they don't necessarily have to be projectors with 3s in their profile. They could be any type of, you know, human design, soul blueprint goodness, but you've lived that experience of going like, here's what I learned and what I grew out of the opportunity of doing all the right things and it still didn't happen.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I really needed to hear that. Thank you for that. Like grounding affirmation.
Right. And this is again why, you know, again, like the hashtag projector life thing, right? That we don't always see ourselves clearly. And I have this so often with the people, you know, like yourself and like other people that I have in my world that are kind of like my biz besties, you know, that like they'll be the ones to come to me and be like, just like, by the way, you know, and they'll drop something in that I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, I get it now. You know, like they just see something that I've been completely blind to the whole time.
Yes.
And it's not through being unaware or unawakened or whatever, you know, like all these trendy words right now, right? Like it's just purely because as projectors, that's part of our thing, that we see other people so fucking clearly.
Yes. Like
But
crystal clear.
don't always get to put that back on ourselves.
No, and it's a little frustrating sometimes, but I'm glad for people like this. Like I know a few months ago, I reached out to you and I'm like, yeah, can we just be soundboards for each other, please?
Yeah. And
So,
also, like, let's just talk on the beauty of that, right? Because that was like an invitation where we had worked together in various capacities for quite a long time. So we knew we already had that kind of open invitation, right? Like it wasn't like just popping up out of the blue and DMing someone to be like, by the way, can I just soundboard to you? Because we knew we had like vibed with each other for a while. We knew that safe space of like soundboarding in a way that isn't necessarily like someone trying to give opinions or whatever, like, you know. And then also being able to know that, like, I mean, we can drop in and out of that space in a way that is very, again, non-linear, right? Like it might be like 2 or 3 days of like bang, 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 and then like months of nothing. And that is like perfect, right? It's not. And I think, again, this is the conditioning of like, if we talk about like old kind of like paradigm business, that a lot of people would have been conditioned to believe that there would be something wrong if they weren't then showing up in that space all the time, or like constantly talking about stuff, or, you know, keeping the momentum going, or whatever the all those sort of conditionings around that would be. And actually to know, no, this is really aligned for us to just go like bang, 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 do something really efficiently, really quickly, soundboard it out, and then go away, go to your own corners, be in your own environment, like do your thing, and then maybe come back together at a certain point in time later. And know that it can just pick right up. Like there is no expectation around like, oh, well, I haven't heard from you in like 2 months. Like, you know, like,
yes.
That's
Yeah.
that level of just getting it and working with your own awareness of your own energetics as well.
Yes. And just having somebody safe, for lack of a better term, to soundboard with feels so good, because like you said, like I don't want people's opinions. I don't want you to try to fix me. I need to figure this out for myself, or it's not like I need to, but that's my desire here. But if you talk, it's going to interrupt my connection to my intuition, right? And that's how it feels for me. Like there's been times where I feel like I'm talking and then somebody will interrupt, and then I feel like there's just immediate stop in the cogs, and like any connection I had to my intuition was gone, especially in the past. And then I'd be like, okay, well, they're obviously smarter than me, so I'll just do what they say.
And that self-doubt that comes from not knowing the answer straight away. I think that's something as well that I've really found. And that was part of my biggest relief moment of actually learning that I was a mental projector, right? Of knowing that actually all those times I felt like I was indecisive or didn't know or needed a whole lot of time to make a decision, or people would, you know, and it could be in the silliest of moments that come to my mind about when, as I was growing up, even something as simple as like, say, going to go try and buy a pair of jeans. Like I can remember standing in like, you know, with other friends in other, you know, dressing room, getting changed, like trying things on, and just straight away being like, yes, this is the one. And I'm standing there with like 5 different options going, I don't know.
It's like undefined G center wants all of them.
Yeah. And also like, I genuinely don't know. I don't have any kind of like, you know, everyone's going like, just trust your gut, or you'll just instantly know. And I'm like, I have never once had that feeling.
No.
Like,
Like I don't have that.
yeah.
But they're trying.
Yeah. And so, you know, obviously like that is a really simple example. And it's one that I kind of laugh that always comes to mind when I think about soundboarding, and like how before I knew anything about this, what it used to feel like. And now I'm like, okay, now I get it. And it's also something that I'm very unapologetic about when it comes to, say, I've been in a Voxer mastermind space over the past 3 months. And that was like, one of the things I came in straight away and said was like, unapologetically, like, look, this is my human design. You know, the person running, facilitating it is well-versed in human design. They were a splenic projector themselves. So they kind of, you know, they knew enough that I could just come in and be like, look, I need to soundboard to make decisions. So I'm probably not going to come in here with like specific 1-minute questions that are very succinct. I'm going to come in here with like a 10-minute voice note where I basically answer my own question. But I would love if you can be there to kind of like give me feedback when I need it.
Right. Oh my gosh, isn't that the truth? It's
like 1 minute. I cannot keep my voice note to 1 minute. Come on.
No. And I know I've done that before too. And then I just want to write a text real quick after, like, I solved my problem, thanks, but you can listen to it tomorrow.
And you know, there would be so much conditioning there if you weren't aware about that about yourself. That would be like, you're not making use of the coach that you have, you know, worked with or chosen to work with in an appropriate way, because you're not taking on their feedback, or you're not asking questions, or you're not I just had a word that I was trying to think of with that, in terms of like that you're not kind of being open to their guidance all the time. And it's like, that's not a negative thing. It's like, yes, we're open to guidance and receiving, you know, the magic from other people that we've chosen to invite into our environment. Because remember as well, like mental projectors, environment is everything. And it's not that we're being stubborn or closed off. It's just knowing, like, especially like, you know, the defined ajna, like that has its own thing going on. And it's so potent and so powerful in a mental projector that it's like, we have to respect that and allow that to kind of come to its own clarity, but then also have that moment when we're like, and I would love to receive whatever extra magic you can like heap on top of this, because I know what the baseline is of like what my core decision is. And now it just gets to be kind of like fertilized to make it bloom even more, right?
Yes. Well, and I imagine for you too, with the 2-line and the projectorness, they might just see a little something or hear a little something in what you said that can make something click even more for you.
Yeah, then, add in like the 6th line that's like, I'm supposed to be a role model. Why am I even like, am I a failure for even needing coaching in the first place? Because these are legit conversations that I would have with myself in the past. Yes. Be like, you know, working with a coach, oh, that means that I'm not good enough at what I do.
Oh, wow.
Because 6th line role model is like, we're supposed to be these perfect walk on water human beings right from day one. And if we're in our business seeking support from someone else, we've failed in some way, shape, or form because we don't know all the answers yet. Like, that's a real journey to go through.
Absolutely, yes.
That it's not an indication that I'm no good at what I do. Which sounds so silly to say it out loud, but I would hope that there's going to be other people out there, you know, listening to this or watching this that are like, oh my fucking God, yeah, this is my life with my business.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you brought that up, because there will most definitely be people who will resonate with that for sure. I know for me, working with coaches, I worked with coaches a lot in the past. Yeah. It started in 2020 with quarantine, right? Anyway, this last coach ended abruptly, but then I realized, it's like a whole 3-line learning process, right? That again, I was coming into it thinking that I wasn't enough. So whereas you are like, it feels like the same but different, right? Where you're saying, oh, well, I'm a role model. Does this mean I don't know enough? But I was like 1-line shadow, total shadow.
Need to know more.
Yes. And the fear motivation was like, okay, obviously we need a coach because they know what they're doing and we don't. So that's when I realized. And so now I can just feel my body shut down whenever I think about hiring a coach right now. And I don't think that's going to last forever. It's just more like, no, you need to learn to trust yourself. I think for me, I need to let myself shine for a little bit by myself. And then, yeah, I mean, I think hiring a coach is an amazing thing because it helps you get to the next level on so many ways.
Mm.
And again, like we were talking about it, they think of things that you might not have, or they see you in a specific way that you don't see yourself. And then I'm curious too, how you experience the soundboarding in that place. Cause I feel like for me, just like once my energy is in the coaching space or like in the group mastermind, then just soundboarding inside of that group Foxer or just inside of that energy helps me in so many ways that wouldn't have otherwise. Like I wouldn't have
Yeah.
access to that energy otherwise. Is that how you feel?
Yeah. And that's why, if anything, I've leaned more towards, if I have chosen to invest in something, it's been more of that intimate mastermindy type Voxer WhatsApp space, because that I feel really allows me to just kind of come in with my voice notes that can be like a minimum of 5 minutes long every time and just talk it out loud and get to that clarity within what I'm saying, or in turn ask for, to sort of say like open to advice or what you can see that I maybe can't see, things like that. And that's been something really, really powerful, because there have definitely been times in my business where I've gone really long stretches of doing it on my own, which is also very aligned as a mental projector, especially a 6'2", in that stage of being up on the roof, right? Like, I unapologetically own my fact that I will happily go for like an entire week not talking to other people and hanging out with my dogs, and like that is like bliss.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with desiring that. But also understanding that, having those kind of more short burst things of like, okay, I just need to come in and kind of refine a few things, tweak a few things. And then, as you say, like it just unlocks that next level that then you can step into and choose to either like continue in your own energy and your own kind of magic as a projector or as a mental projector, but then also to choose whether you want to then continue to like have that support group. And if anything, I've also found like what has been really powerful is that, again, purely one of those situations where I was invited into it. It wasn't something that I was necessarily actively looking for or trying to facilitate, but I got invited in by some other women who were already kind of in a group chat that was just like a group of friends who are all running soul-based businesses, all love human design, all love astrology. And we already naturally had quite a dynamic in terms of doing things within, the online space, connecting on Instagram. And one of them reached out one day and was just like, hey, we have this group chat. Do you want to come be part of it? And I was just like, oh my God, dream invitation. Amazing. Yeah. And that, if anything, for me, is also a really beautiful space where I've found that the soundboarding has really been beneficial for me to be in that space, because it is such a trusted environment. Because this is the other aspect of soundboarding, right? Is that we have to be in a trusted environment or with a trusted person to be able to actually use it, because otherwise, I don't know about you, but for me, it's like I just clam shut.
Yes.
I don't feel comfortable sharing my opinion, my insight, my voice. And I just go into like, the clam is shut and it will not open. And I just go into kind of, I will absorb, I will sit back, I will observe, but I'm not actively part of the energetic exchange. And there's value in sitting back and observing, but I've found being in that sort of space where I feel safe and I feel seen and I feel recognized. I can go in there and share, and things can shift so rapidly in the space of like 10 minutes in that space for me, I find. And the beauty of it is that that's just purely coming together with people who are friends. It doesn't have to be hiring a coach and working with a coach, but it can be.
Yes. And that's a good point too. It's all about the environment of the soundboarding. And so maybe if somebody doesn't have a group of friends yet, or they're brand new in their entrepreneur business, then that's where hiring a coach can be so supportive and having a space for soundboarding, as long as that coach understands soundboarding as well.
Yes. And this is where I believe truly that having coaches who are human design informed is the
Mhm.
future of coaching, right? Like in
Mhm.
general, I don't believe that every single person needs to know how to read a human design chart, but I do believe that having that level of being informed about energy types, about strategies, about authorities, about profiles, maybe at a, kind of extension of that,
Mhm.
is so powerful, because the similar thing can be with astrology, right, as well, in terms of
Yeah.
like, it doesn't have to be human design, but it could be something like astrology. But this is where the two come really beautifully together, because astrology tells us a lot of the kind of what of our energetic makeup, because obviously it is a part of human design as well. It's one of the
Mhm.
foundations that it's based on. However, human design gives us the tangible, like, how do you then take that gift that you, or that series of gifts that you have activated within you, and how do you actually show up and be in energetic alignment using that? Because obviously you could have an Aries sun who is a generator, a manifesting generator, a projector,
Right.
a manifestor, or a reflector, and those are 5 completely different expressions of what it means to be an Aries sun sign, right?
Yes. And then we get into the specific gate that's highlighted in their sun sign. So,
Mm, yeah.
yeah, there's all these specifics.
Yeah, so it kind of just gives you that beautiful user manual of knowing. And as you say, going back to that kind of conversation about, if you are going to work with a coach, or if you are going to bring someone in terms of, say, like a mastermindy type support network or something, having that, being informed in human design, I believe, is like absolutely the next evolution of coaching, because then it means that people are not trying to just apply a one size fits all strategy, or even if they are primarily working with energetics, it's understanding that even just focusing on divine feminine flow shows up really differently for different human design types, right? Like, I'm speaking as a quad left here. Like, I
Yeah.
love embodying my divine feminine in, as much as possible, but I am always going to be very heavily in my divine masculine expression. And I love structure. I love following masterclasses that have slides. I love taking notes. I find it really hard to learn from people who are just sitting talking to camera.
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong with me, and there's nothing wrong with them teaching in that way, but it's me understanding that, and also potentially a coach understanding that about the way they teach and interact with their people, that their clients that they're working with, is so powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's I love too when coaches will share their design, because then I can understand more of where their stuff is coming from, and I can filter it through that lens. And so that helps me. And especially, in their type and stuff. So like a manifester will have some kind of slide, and for a second, and like I always get a little triggered by manifestors.
Yeah, yeah, and
But the
that's
whole,
and that's and that's the beautiful thing, right? Is that's exactly what they're fucking here to do. If they're thriving in
right,
their design, they're supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. Like,
right.
it's not
Especially if
supposed
they're
to
an ego
be.
manifester, it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're so right that I am such a proponent of people, if they know their human design, and they are in that sort of space of being a service provider of some kind, whether it's like coaching, whether it's mentoring, whatever, like having that openness about, hey, this is what my human design is, I
Mhm.
believe is really powerful, because it doesn't mean that we go out like actively choosing people based on their human design, or being like kind of, oh, I'm going to completely overlook the merits of this person because of their human design, right?
Right.
But it allows you to go into that energetic exchange informed. And just using that example of a manifestor, like, now knowing what I know, I look back, and my first coach I ever worked with in a group program was a manifestor.
Mm.
And I now understand what, like, the feeling of being in that space, as opposed to then my coach I worked with like a couple of years ago, who was a splenic projector. And that was when my business took off, working with a splenic projector and having that dynamic of someone who understood my energetics. I vibed with their energetics. The manifester like exploded things in the terms of like coming in to cut across a whole lot of bullshit and doing all the very necessary manifester informing ways. But also there was a lot of my own shadow side that got kind of like, you know, dragged to the surface that I had to confront around like, you know, being pushed out of my comfort zone in that way. So there are absolutely benefits to everything in terms of like our interactions, but it's also understanding that when we can make an informed decision, I think that's the most powerful application of this knowledge. And also, as you say, it also then allows mentors or coaches or teachers to own their own energy as well. Doesn't mean you have to like shrink yourself to fit a mold, but it lets you understand how you are then conditioning someone else, right?
Yes. And I've even started, when I do readings, I'll show my chart real quick and just take a minute to say like, here's where this information is being.
I love that. That's such a cool idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially if they have like splenic authority or just a lot of bodily definition, I'll just tell them like I don't have it, but I can tell you what I've read about it and what other people have told me about it. Like I've got a lot of wisdom about it. I just don't have, like, my 3 line is like, I don't know what it feels like.
Yeah.
But
and your 1 line is like, here are my notes.
Here's 2 pages just on your defined spleen. You've got 8 hours for this, right?
Here's the 5 years of research I've done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's been a journey too in my readings, like realizing what to talk about, what not to. And I've gotten a little more intuitive with it, where I'll just let my 1 line go crazy and before the meeting, and then I just show up and flow when we talk. So it's been a good combo. But you mentioned quad left earlier. So let's talk about that a little more. And how that shows up for you. For anybody who doesn't know this aspect of human design, there's arrows by your head in the chart, and they either point left or right. So roses all point left, then so they're all 4 point left, which is why it's quad left. And you can have any combination of this.
Yeah.
I have 2 that point left and 2 that point right. And then there's people who are quad right and all of that. So anyway, as a quad left, it's very strategic, very masculine, as you were saying before. So how does that show up for you? What's your experience with that?
I think again, these are where things in our human design, we just naturally do it without realizing that we do it. And so I have always been someone who identified very more predominantly with my divine masculine energy. I always felt like, you know, growing up, like tomboy, you know, kind of really aligned more with a masculine energy. Like all of my friends, you know, was sort of like a mix of, you know, obviously people, but I had like some of my best friends were guys and things like that. So I really, you know, kind of, and I think my mum always laughs when she's like, you know, I was like a 4-year-old or 5-year-old, and she would try and be like, here's this nice dress to wear, and I was like, no, like let's put on the like shorts and like like, you know, active wear. Thanks. Like, what am I supposed to do with a pretty dress? So that's the kind of like where we naturally embody a lot of this without realizing, right? And then moving through into, you know, my business and going on my own exploration of like, you know, my own spiritual journey and kind of coming out of the spiritual closet, so to speak, and all of these things. And then coming across all these beautiful like goddess, priestess energies that were very like quad right, you know, the divine feminine, everything, flowers, flower crowns, floaty dresses, and then going, is there something wrong with me that like I've never been that person? And like, you know, and then accepting that I can still show up in that energy if I want to. But my quad left is where I'm going to be kind of in my comfort zone, basically. So I don't need to force myself to have to embody both, right? Because I think that's something that, again, we get conditioned to believe that we are supposed to be a balance of both energies. right?
Yeah. Like you have to have the balance. Yes.
Yeah. And so I've been very much accepting or learning to accept the fact that it's actually really aligned for me to allow the strategy, the structure, the kind of frameworks, all of those things within my business. So the way I teach is very like, I'll create Canvas slides and I'm speaking to slides. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we just had a quick Zoom moment, but you were talking about how you create Canvas slides when you're teaching. And so you have that structure there.
Yeah. And so I embrace that in terms of the way I set up my resources, like how I share things. So it's very much that energy of like, if you're going to come into my world, it's like I've got, yeah, the Canvas slides. It's like masterclass presentation style of, having that. I like providing transcript style notes. I like having, all of the sort of the very, like, you can get your notebook and you can be taking notes alongside as I'm, following the slides sort of approach. And also within my business, then probably where that really facilitates my energetics in terms of, I love embodying, like, as my mental projector energy can produce things that are very like efficient. So it's like producing, say, something that is a long form piece of content that is very structured, but then everything else, say, in that week is very like go with the flow, like allowing my energy to work in the way it works. So, a lot of the content I produce, for example, I will look to specific things that, say, maybe are like energetic transits and how you can work with that in your business, working with the moon, things like that. So I kind of have these touch points of content that I know, like, and I just always check in to go, okay, this is what's going on. How does that feel in terms of my energy around creating content to go along with that? That's got quite like, here's how you can apply it in your business, right? So it's got that quad left energy around, I'm always going to give value of like, here's the information, but also here's how you can embody it. So either it's going to have some specifics for your human design type, or it's going to have some specific human design gate activations to look for in your chart, or even like some journaling prompts, for example, to go, here's how you can then work with that energy. But equally, like allowing the flow in terms of, and this is where the structure and the consistency conversation gets nuanced, right? Because you and I are not designed to be consistent energetically, right? Like we thrive with allowing ourselves to work with our undefined sacral and undefined everything, like in terms of like ebbs and flows of energy. So I might have that kind of loose structure in my mind, but I also don't punish myself if I have a day where I'm just like not feeling it. Like I'm actually going to go and just do some creative writing, or I'm going to go do something else, or I just need to go walk my dogs, or, whatever the case may be. So there is structure there is framework there that can allow my business to have that kind of momentum, but it's done in a very energetically fluid way. And I actually got asked this question the other day of someone was saying, oh, how do you structure your week? And how do you plan your week? And I'm like, well, actually, I don't structure my week. I have maybe like 3 to 5 things I know I want to get done in terms of like, maybe they're must-dos, maybe they're kind of like, yes, I would love to get this ticked off, so that it keeps moving me forward towards my bigger goal. But I work with the moon, like I work with the moon phases. I work with my menstrual cycle. So I don't have like Monday, I do this, Tuesday, I do this, Wednesday, I do this. Like I have kind of a overarching umbrella of like, this is the direction I'm going in, that quad left kind of structure. But I very much just flow with like, oh, well, the moon's in Pisces today, so like, I'm going to just kind of like allow myself to be creative. And then tomorrow I know, the moon shifted into Aries, and typically my energy is going to be much more driven and determined, and like that's when I can get into like creating some of these, it might mean that I wait a day to do the post rather than doing it exactly on the day of the, let's say if we're talking about a transit, for example, that transit might be happening over the course of like 2, 3, 4 weeks. It doesn't matter if I don't do the post on like day one. Right? Like this is an energy that's going to be around for a while. So it's like I work with my energy around that and go like, okay, well, this is where I'm at energetically on this day. I know I can look at like, what's coming up in terms of this week. And I know that by, day 2 or day 3 into the week, this is how my energy typically feels. And that's been a process of also like observing myself, right? And learning my own pattern and own flow, because 5 years ago, you would have had me all up in the like, this is my calendar, this is my to-do list, this is my everyday, like structure, stick to it, like massive to-do list that is insane.
Right. That undefined roots, like, it's fine. We can do all this.
Yeah. Honestly, like I can remember having days where I would have like an entire A4 page covered in stuff. And I was like, punishing myself if I wasn't getting it all done. And it's like now I just have kind of a rule that I'm like, in any given day, I allow myself like 3 things that I'm like, those are my 3 things to get done today. And also it doesn't matter if I don't do them, but like that is my framework, right? 3 things. And any more than that, I know I'm getting into territory of like, amazing if I get it done, but also like, doesn't fucking matter, it'll still be there tomorrow.
Right. Like, right. Like it'll still be there. You can chill.
Yeah.
I totally relate to that. So I've started doing the same thing, and I'll still write out the page-long list, because then that gets it out of my brain. And this is what I tell other people too, like release that mental anxiety, release the pressure from the root, and then check in with strategy and authority. What do you actually need to do today?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's so important to, as you say, have ways that we can release the pressure in terms of like getting it written down. I'm a big fan of journaling, writing things down, all of that, like, again, which I think is partly the leftness, like you've got your 2 left facing arrows, like, so I think that's where some of that comes in. I mean, if you are 3 or 4 right facing arrows, I think there are different ways that you can facilitate that, in terms of whether it is just like working with something that is, say, like the morning pages kind of approach of writing, that you just every morning when you wake up, you maybe go and make your coffee or cacao or whatever, and you just grab like a, journal, and you're just writing for at least 3 pages. And it can be gibberish, like it can be nothing. It can literally be 3 pages of writing, I don't know what to write. But that is that process of extracting it, because the more arrows you have facing to the right, the more you are in that energy of like, it's passive, it's receptive, it's flow, it's kind of like some days it's going to be there, some days it's not, and it's working with that to kind of open your channel more, so that you can get comfortable with knowing your own patterns around what are the days that it flows. Is there a pattern to the flow, or is it truly that it is purely spontaneous? And at least in that way, you are then open to receiving the flow when it comes, rather than putting pressure on yourself to have to like perform on a schedule. And there's a few people in my world that are quad right, that I kind of, we're always having these sorts of conversations around that. They're going like, oh, I just, within their business, they're like, I'm trying to do it this way because that's what I feel that people need. But actually, I know I thrive when I just literally let myself show up, and I jump on a live whenever I want to. And I just, I'm responding to somebody's question, and then I can just go with it. And it all comes out so effortlessly. And I'm like, well, yeah, like just give yourself permission to do that.
Yes. That's what I love too. It's all about the permission, and how I never actually tell anybody anything brand new about themselves in human design, but it helps them to embody it more and gives them the permission. So yes. Did it take you a while to move out of the structured space and to get to this place where you're the person that's like, well, here's the 3 things I want to do this week?
Yeah, it did. It and that goes back to kind of that process of before human design really was kind of, delivered to me in that package of, you've done your work deconditioning and slowing down and getting to a point in your life where you have let go of all of that old paradigm hustle culture conditioning that you were in, but it still took a lot of experimenting with around getting to that point of some of these other ways of working with, my cycle, working with the moon cycle, and also allowing myself that permission to like experiment with it, because for some people, they're going to be much more connected to, say, their menstrual cycle, for example, and that's going to be the thing that really is their kind of guiding energetic rhythm.
Yes.
In my case, probably the moon is probably the more predominant one, and then I just kind of like am aware of where I'm at with my menstrual cycle in amongst that. So it's like allowing yourself to play with it and kind of go, and these are long cycles, right? Like it's not just like a couple of days and then the experiment's done. This is like month after month of like being aware and practicing, and having that kind of patience to actually go through the process of, oh yeah, okay, so last month this is what it looked and felt like, and this month now I see the difference, and then oh shit, I forgot that actually this is what's going on at the moment. Yeah, so having things like I've had this Magic of I planner for 2 years now. And that's one that I really, really love, because that's got all the moon phases and other astrological things in there, but it's like every single day has got the moon phase already listed out for you. And so that takes away a whole lot of the like mental work of trying to figure it out. It's like it's right there on the page in front of you. And so it gets much easier, much quicker to work with those energies. And then it's like, all I have to do is show up and like put in, say, like where I'm at with my own cycle, like, in amongst that. Right. So there's all these things that you can use now that are out there. Like, I mean, these are amazing tools that are already done and made for you. And you can just like experiment with them to go, what feels good for me.
Yes, exactly. Because we're all a little different. So it's okay.
Yeah.
I love following the moon. Like that's the first thing I do when I get a new planner or something. I write down the moon, and I'm starting to experiment this year with how I feel during each astrological season as well. It started in September, because that's when I could just really feel this shift. And so I'm just starting to pay attention to that, because that's just another cycle thing. We have the monthly with the moon, the monthly cycles as a woman, but then there's, Aries season and there's Taurus season. And, so now I'm digging into that. Like, when do I feel really good? When am I crashing?
Yeah. And add to that your individual like astrology of your houses within those seasons. So it's like these are rabbit holes that it's like you can go as deep as you want to go, but exactly like you say, that Aries season has got a vastly different energy to Pisces season for everyone collectively. But then similarly, if your Pisces is your 12th house, that's very, very different energy to, say, Aries being your 12th house, for example, and so on and so forth. So these are things that, if you feel called to investigate it and to dive into it and like learn about it, I always say to people, like, just give yourself the permission to do it, because that's something as well that I've found people really suddenly it's like their minds are blown, that they're like, oh my God, now I can see how I've been pushing myself to show up, say, during Pisces season every year in this very businessy, whatever energy. And we've looked at their astrology chart and I'm like, yeah, but Pisces is your 12th house. Basically, you're supposed to disappear into your creative cave and not talk to anyone. And here you are trying to like push sales and like be doing a launch and like all of these things that are very like traditional business advice for that time, in that calendar, like, Gregorian calendar year of like what time of year that is. But actually everyone's got their own pace and rhythm within that.
Absolutely, yes. Yes. That's what's been so powerful, learning this stuff and experimenting with this stuff. Because you're right, it's different. Like, and then, and then you can go even deeper. What planets do you have in there? What gates are lit up in that house
Yeah.
for human design? And blah, blah, like there, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Seriously, like whole series of episodes in the future could be talked about this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it is really like going back to the basics of it, as you say, is starting to give yourself that permission to work with whatever feels like it calls to you. And I think that's the biggest thing. For me, the moon called so strongly. As soon as I like started learning about that, I was like, yeah, okay, I know that this is something I am meant to work with very, very predominantly. Yes, understanding my menstrual cycle has been powerful, but for other people, that menstrual cycle awareness and teaching about that and, working with that is their strongest calling, or,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. So it's not kind of looking at it through the lens of like, oh, well, someone else does it this way, so that's what I'm supposed to do. It's leaning into, like I always say, it's like we intuitively know. We know
Yeah.
what calls to us. We know what resonates with us. And that is the biggest thing to return to, rather than necessarily looking at what somebody else is doing in their business. Trust in what just excites you. Trust in what is like that thing that grabs at you that you can't explain why. Like that's probably like the most important place to start always.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then even because I realize as a mental projector, again, we don't have any of that body stuff, but there's still things that will catch my attention and like give me tingles or something. And then even if it doesn't, if it turns out like if you have this moment of, oh, well, they do it that in their business, so I should do that too, and then you try
Yeah.
it, well, then you experiment with it and you figure out if it's for you or not, as long as you're not judging yourself. Like allow yourself to experiment. That's fine. See
Yeah,
if it
that's
works
the
for you.
most,
It doesn't.
that's probably like the key to it all, right? Is not to judge yourself, allow yourself to experiment, and like don't take it so seriously, I think is one of probably like my own big learnings and lessons.
Same.
It's like,
Yes.
again, having a 6 line, it's like I can be the worst for taking it way too seriously, like it's like forgetting that actually this is supposed to have a whole element of fun attached to it. And it's like role model is going like, oh, we must be like these super, like strategic, serious people, because otherwise, and this is actually something I've just recently been having kind of a bit of a self-reflection moment on within my own, say like social media space, because predominantly I share and teach in that vein of like, I'm always asking myself that question of, is this providing value? Is this providing a learning? What is someone going to take away from this that is that feeling of like, oh my God, this is so me. I can't wait to share this, right? Like that's my guiding kind of insight when it comes to social media. But then I always know that like when I share memes that I can't stop laughing about, when I share, especially human design memes, right? Like when I share even just the fact that I sat and like binged Bridgerton in one like sitting over the weekend, like those are the things that my DMs like explode over. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. It's like we get to have fun at the same time as doing the business stuff, right?
I was so glad you said that. I was just reminding myself of that today. So I'm curious from your 6 line perspective, because I guess I didn't realize how serious a 6 line can get. And it makes sense if it's like, well, but I'm a role model, so I need to be a role model. But I can understand the seriousness from the 1 line perspective.
Yeah.
So
because they've got like harmonies, right? Like, each line has got harmonies. So yeah, it's got that same kind of thing of like different variation of how it shows up, but it has got that level of like weightiness to it, that it's like, yeah, having just feeling that pressure of always having to have been in that kind of role model-y energy of like, knowing right from the start. It's like, I kind of think back on some of my own childhood stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I was like the super serious fucking kid, like from day one, like if anything, there were so many occasions where it's like I was like, going around behind my parents, kind of like, tidying up things behind the scenes. in the most loving way, right? Like, you know, they're amazing people, but like I was that kid that was like, oh guys, you left this drawer full of stuff here, like, you know, as we were moving out of an apartment or whatever, you know, like that's like other kids would just be like in the car whining and being
Right.
like, right? Like, whereas I was like running around, you know, like checking that we hadn't missed anything.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can
Yeah.
so relate to that.
Yeah.
So another thing I'm fascinated by with the sixth line is the whole moving to the roof aspect, because
Yeah.
I've watched a couple people on Instagram. I just happened to catch them like right as Saturn return was hitting. And so
Mm.
I've been watching them the past couple of years, and the energy shift is so fascinating to me. I mean, honestly, I get a little jealous because I'm just three line and everything.
Like strapping on your backpack every day and like going out into the, I love calling 3 lines like the Dora the Explorer experience, right? It's like, let's pop our backpack on, take all our life learnings, and like, what fucking adventure are we on today? Like, I have no idea.
I never thought of it that way, but that gives me a more fun visual. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah,
Probably.
six line on the roof. Yeah, it is. It's hard to explain, right? Like it's because I guess like for me, it's got the added layer of the 2 lines. So if anything, it's more of a retreat process than possibly someone who is a 6-3 profile, for example, or a 4-6, for example. So for me, it has very much been being unapologetically happy to be in my own company and in my own space and be in the middle of nowhere, and kind of like kind of my running joke when everyone around the world was starting to go into lockdown life was, I was like, my life literally has not changed. Like there is not one aspect of my life that has changed. You know, I was that meme that was like, nothing has changed. So that's probably the best way I can describe it, is it's like being very, very comfortable and unapologetically so, of like being in my own company, doing things my own way, getting more and more like permission to turn the dial up on my weird, and like, you know, kind of, or weird, like, you know, because it's like, to me it's normal, but it's like just being more comfortable with going like, this is my world, and like, come on in if you want to come on in, but like, this is the vibe, you know.
Yes.
We're not here to like fuck around with kind of trying to pretend to be something that we're not. Like this is the vibe here. And also it's reflected in the way I show up within my business, because I've noticed myself that like when I first started out like working for myself, I was very much in that energy of like, and this is probably again reflective of that transition of like being prepared to do one-on-one readings and like jump on Zoom calls and do lives on Facebook, and like very outward energy. And now I'm just like, everything within my business is structured so that I can do it in my own time, in my own pace. It's pre-recorded, you know, and that's how I deliver things. And that is like so aligned for me.
Yes.
And worked so well for me. And it took a while to wrestle with that, but now I'm like, I actually deliver so much more value by allowing that. And so even when I do say like a series of free masterclasses, for example, I did them as like, I did like 3 days. So recently I did an event that was called Abundant as Fuck. And I did 3 days back to back. And each day was a 2-hour masterclass, all for free. And they were all pre-recorded. And then I just popped them online, popped them in the group where the event was being held, and just let people consume them in their own time. And the feedback I got from that was amazing, because I knew that like people who are in my world are also focused on their soul calling work. They're focused on their business. They're focused on bringing their own magic to life. Like, I don't want my people, my soul clients, to be like taking 6 hours out of their week to like stop what they're doing and watch a live masterclass and be all engaged. I want them to be able to do it when it works for them. So when I show up in that energy of going like, here's the thing, here's the value, here's the like, you know, resource, and now you can take it away and like absorb it in the way that aligns for you. I just know that that's always going to be so much more valuable and so much more potent for people. Whereas someone with a different profile or different human design type, having the live element and the interaction and the engagement is what energizes them and what vitalizes them and what draws out their magic, right? Because again, this is kind of touching back on the quad left, quad right conversation.
Yes.
That for me, I can do that because my quad leftness is like, this is what I'm here to deliver. My defined ajna is like, this is what I'm here to deliver. My defined throat is like, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
And so that vibes for me. And then someone who is a different energetic makeup needs maybe to do it in a way that they're doing Q&As, or like they're getting questions from the floor and then they're responding to that and things like, whereas for me, I'm like, that gives me anxiety even just thinking about that. But it doesn't mean that there's not value in both approaches.
Exactly. Yes. Because okay, sorry, like 25 questions just popped in my head. So, but the thing I think I want to draw out here first is just the aspect of it being free, because there are plenty of other projectors in our online space saying projectors should never work for free. And acting like, you know, our energy is really important, and it is. Everybody's energy is important, especially projector though. I mean, just the way it's made up. And so we don't need to be working for free. And part of me really appreciates that and wants to be able to show up in that way, like, you must pay me for what I do. But the other part of me also really loves giving away free stuff and really appreciates when you do that. And I feel a little more aligned to that. So how do you reconcile that? Like, what's your mindset on free stuff?
So I think the first thing that I feel called to say is that there's a lot of projector myths in the kind of human design-y space, right? Like there's a lot of people who are not projectors talk about projectors from, again, no fault of their own, because you can't understand it unless you've lived it, and they're teaching what somebody else has taught them, right? So there's a lot of that kind of language that becomes quite limiting in terms of, or restrictive in terms of projectors. When it comes to their output, their capacity. Essentially, projectors, we just have highly fucking efficient energy, right? Like we have got really highly potent energy when we apply it in alignment. And what that means is that we need to be completely shaking up any way we've ever been told how to work. And whether that means working like 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, and just doing everything super efficiently. And then the rest of the day is just like creative play, doing the stuff that just lights us up, whatever the case may be. Or for, like, in the case of an energy projector who might have like 4 or 5 centers and chakras defined, right? They actually probably might be like, you know what, I actually really want to be showing up and engaging with my clients and doing work for a much longer day, but I'm going to do it in the case of, like, I might do 2 weeks that are like boom fucking go time, and then I take like 2 weeks off, you know, whatever. Like it's working with the ebb and flow and understanding how we can be, when we're on, we are on, and then allowing yourself to be off when it's the off time. And that's probably the biggest thing, is understanding what downtime means as a projector, whether it's active relaxing, whether it's literally allowing yourself rest, all of those things. Again, it comes back to the recognizing ourselves first conversation we were having earlier. And the way I look at it in terms of like sharing free resources, free trainings, free content is like, I'm only sharing what lights me the fuck up. Like I'm only sharing without expectation in that free realm of like, is this something I would happily sit down over coffee and talk about all day? Yes. And I will share that for free, gladly, all day, every day, because it genuinely lights me up. And it's genuinely something, like, as we can see, like, you know, already, I don't even know how long we've been talking on this podcast already, but it's like, it's so easy. It's so fun. It's in flow, right? This doesn't feel heavy at all. This is like, we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. And that's the way I see my resources that I share for free, because I'm just like, this is what I recognize within myself and I'm happy to share. As opposed to Yes, absolutely. I am so here for us being paid for our soul work, being abundant as fuck, being like, you know, receiving the abundance, prosperity, success, all of the things that we get to do in an exchange energetically, whether it's money, right? Like, or other energetic exchanges. So the way I see it is that if it becomes something that is like requiring us to sit and dedicate ourselves and be that kind of work, so in that essence, in that vein, like for me, my work that I do is like, if I'm going to look at somebody's chart in a one-on-one kind of laser focus capacity, right? That to me is what I would consider work, that I'm like, no, I'm going to be paid for this, because this is something that is really requiring me to get into my projector, like I don't know if intensity is the right word, but you know what I mean, like, you know, it's like it's energy that is being applied to something in a very, very focused way. It also gets to be easy, right, because it's, again, projector working in alignment. But in that kind of case, that's something that I believe is work that we should always be paid for. When we consider it kind of our soul work, that's what we get paid for. But in terms of like sharing free stuff, I truly believe that like that is new paradigm business as well, in the sense that it is serving our soul clients to the best when they can vibe with us, then when they can see how it feels to work with us, when they can see and get a taste of like, this is how it feels to be in this person's space. This is the value. This is the potency. This is the transformation. Imagine what it would be like if I worked with this person in a paid capacity. That's how I always choose to see it, that I'm like, I am only going to shine, you know, like on my billboard of like my social media or my free offers stuff, that I'm like, I will happily talk about this all day. Just like, you know, you probably want to like, can't wait to get away from the conversation.
No,
like,
I'm in it too. I'm like,
yeah, like, you know, like other people might be like backing out the door, like, okay, bye, you know, like, kind of like, and I'm like, no, wait, I haven't told you everything. You know, if that's the vibe for me, then I am always going to be happy to share it for free, because again, it's like the this is, again, the accessibility conversation as well, right? That this is a cornerstone of my work. Like I have gate 45 activated, right? So and it's part of my incarnation cross. So it's like all part of what I'm here to do, my soul purpose, that it's accessibility of like, I want everyone in my world to be resourced. I want everyone to know their human design. I want everyone to be like lifted up by this and empowered. I don't want to gatekeep it behind you know, paid offers and things. I want to be able to give you the basics so that you can actually embody this and be empowered with this. And of course, if you want to go deeper, here's how you can go deeper with me. Now, not everybody's human design is that. So I don't want people to listen to this and be like, oh my God, this means I have to suddenly start producing lots of free content, because you kind of have to understand your own energetics with this, and so there's lots of layers to it. But that for me is a big part of why I'm here to share what I'm here to share, in terms of not only my alignment energetically, but also my incarnation cross, my soul purpose, you know, like all of these aspects as well. Yeah, it's a really, I love this question, because I think it's such an important thing that we understand that we have to be strong in our mindset that people are going to get value from us sharing our magic in a way that they need to be able to make an informed decision about what it's like to work with us, right? Like if we are in that space of exchanging energetically or money-wise, we have to give people the opportunity to work out whether it's right for them. And I don't believe in sort of like holding it all back until the point that like somebody hands over their money and then they might go, oh shit, actually, this isn't really a vibe for me. And then it's like, what good is that doing anyone? Right?
Yeah. I don't like that vibe either. So I really appreciate your perspective on this, because I also was thinking about the people who might hear that of like, oh, projector has to charge for everything, and then they think that's what they're supposed to do, but they feel a little conflicted. And so to know that there is a amazing projector giving away so much amazing goodness. I mean, really, y'all, like, go to the website, go to her Instagram, you'll find some
Thank you.
awesomeness.
Also, I will just say that, like, I only share stuff in a very fucking efficient way. Like, right, like I produce stuff that is very much like, I do it when I'm in flow, and then I make it work hard for me in terms of like the online space, right? Like, my content is very much like social media stuff. I'm making like a series of carousel slides for Instagram. I'm sharing them to Facebook. I'm sharing them to my email list. I'm sharing them to my stories. Like, I'm doing a long form piece of content that I'm then like making it go to all the places. I'm not creating like 10 different pieces of content, right? Like,
Yes.
hashtag efficiency.
Yes. I've even heard on your podcast where you had done like a Facebook Live and then you put it on your podcast.
Yeah.
I was like, that's genius. Why did I think of that? So yeah.
Honestly, it's like the internet is such an amazing gift for projectors, and for every energy type, I should say, but especially for projectors, reflectors, manifestors, that we can repurpose stuff in a way that is, doing something once and then it can go to all the places, it can do all the things. I even, a lot of the time, like in my Instagram stories, for example, I'll just go back to old posts or reels that I made like 6 months, a year ago, and I just share them to my stories. Like, it doesn't matter that I created it ages ago, it's still got value. There's still a whole lot of my audience that never saw it the first time around. Like, share it again, right? Like,
I'm so glad you said that, because I forget that all the time. I think if this might be a one-line thing where it's like, no, we've already done that.
yeah.
but you're so right. Like, if that was a year ago, so much has happened. So why not just share it again?
Either people forget and then they're like, oh my God, yes, I remember this. This was like, I loved it the first time. I love it the second time. You think, how many times do we rewatch stuff on Netflix or YouTube or whatever? Like,
That's a good point.
we rewatch series and shows and movies that we love over and over again. We know exactly what's going to happen. We know the storyline. We know the dialogue. Like, we don't care. We love it. And that's exactly, like, we have to look at our businesses like this as well, to be like, it doesn't always have to be algorithm based. It doesn't always have to be something new every 24 hours like that. No, can't. No.
Yes, you can let that go.
yeah, let that shit go.
Okay, I got to go back to your gate 45 for a second, because I'm having memories, but totally forgotten. Do you mind sharing your incarnation cross?
Yeah, sure. So what I'm just going to do while we're sitting here, just so my brain doesn't have a like brain fart and talk about the wrong gates, because you know what it's like when you're like looking at like multiple people's charts all the times, and then suddenly like somebody goes, oh, what are your specific ones? And you're like, so my conscious activations are gate 63 sun, gate 64, and then gate 26, gate 45 unconscious activations. Awesome. So okay. I am my incarnation cross is left angle cross of dominion, and 6-2 activations. So nice. 63 and 64 are 6 lines, and 26 and 45 are 2 lines. So
okay, that helps. I have 45 on my unconscious sun, and so for a second I was like, wait, do we have the same incarnation cross? Surely I remember this.
No. So it very much is like basically being here to talk about everything that is like the unknowable, unanswerable questions, and then also to talk about it in a way that is like accessible for everyone, gate 26, and so that everyone is well resourced and empowered in the queendom, as I like to call it, of gate 45. So that's kind of where it obviously was always the plan all along, to end up being someone who spends my entire life talking about the cosmos and human design and the stars and like the planets and astrology and gene keys and like all the things, because it's like, no, I can't give you tangible, like, kind of like definitive answers, but I can give you lots of big fucking questions.
Yes, so that you can find the answers for yourself.
Yeah, and here's the resources for you to be able to go away and like, you know, be able to go and do a whole lot of research on and like get into embodying yourself, your own design and your own soul blueprint in your own time as well. Because that's one thing I sort of have found is that we can talk about human design till we're blue in the face. But if people don't actually know how to live it and breathe it in their lives, there's kind of no point, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah. So we can get stuck in the mire of the sort of the specifics and the teachings and the, you know, the rhetoric around like, oh, this is the type of language you're supposed to use. This is the type of wording you're supposed to use. This is the original teachings. This is the new paradigm teachings. Like, people can get very stuck in that conversation. And I'm sitting here going, but if people don't actually understand what it means to live their strategy,
right,
then none of the rest of it matters. So
exactly.
yeah, if people don't understand what it means to have a sacral response and to ask themselves yes, no questions all day long, or to be responding to the world around them, then there is no point getting into conversations about like all the other layers of it, because that cornerstone piece needs to be there in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah. I tell people that same thing because I imagine you get this question a lot given how much you talk about it in your business. But I know for me, every reading lately, I'll ask, you know, what is your intention? Like, what are you really hoping to learn in this time? And it's all about purpose. I want to know my life purpose. I want to know what I'm here for. And I get it. Like, I remember being there too. And I think people want this answer where I can say, okay, well, you are this. And so now go off and do this thing. And, but it's the same thing. Like, I can tell you what it means to have gate 20 in your unconscious Mercury, but that doesn't matter if you don't actually know how to live your design.
Yeah.
Get into that. So I guess my main question though is like, where do you point people if they come to you and say, oh, I want to know my life purpose? You talk about all this stuff. What can I do? Where do you point them?
So I kind of have two levels. I think I will always speak to it on. I sort of will always guide people to following what is it that is like calling to your soul, right? Irrelevant of human design. What is it that you inexplicably are always feeling called to, drawn to? Because obviously as well, like all of these gate activations that we have within our human design, they don't actually give us the specifics of the what, right? They give us guidelines of like the energetic spectrum that we're going to be on. But like my conscious sun gate 63 6-line activation is not telling me to be someone who teaches about human design, right?
Right.
It's giving me an energetic spectrum of like how I show up in that energy of my life's work. And my other incarnation cross soul purpose gates are giving me guiding energy, but I could apply that into so many different avenues. But for me, I know what intuitively I'm called towards and what I'm driven towards and what lights me up to, again, like I can, you know, go on about all day long, right? For someone else, that could be cooking. For someone else, that could be painting. For someone else, that could be horse riding. For someone else, you know, so on and so on and so on. So I always like to start by saying to people, like, what is it that you are, you know, called towards, or like always drawn to, or feel like you could talk about all day long? And then, you know, if and when it is aligned to do so, it's then looking into the specifics of your life's work, your conscious sun activation, your incarnation cross. And then my other favorites I love to dive into is your vocation, that unconscious Mars activation, and then your prosperity placement being your conscious Jupiter. And that's getting into like obviously the specifics, but like that's where I love to kind of dance with in terms of that, and then add that layer of strategy and energy type strategy and authority in with that, because obviously again, it's like that is the cornerstone. All those other specific gate activations, if you're not living your strategy and authority first and foremost, like they're kind of not irrelevant, but it's like they're not going to be activated in the way that the most heightened or in their highest energetic expression, right? Because everything's got an energetic expression. We can use our gate 45 for good and empowerment and like being able to like lift everybody up, or you can use gate 45 in a way that is like, go and fucking do what I told you to do, right? There is a huge energetic spectrum there that we have to appreciate every gate has. And we also, and this is where also, like, you know, you spoke about before, like a lot of the, you know, the moments when you've had the shadow side creep up and stuff like that. And it's like, this is where I love as well having the gene keys element, because we get to understand that shadow energetic expression of the gifts that we have and get familiar with what that looks like when it shows up, and you know, pokes its head up, and to go, okay, it's okay for me to have that within me, and aware of that, be aware of that, I should say, but this is where I'm choosing to like focus and you know, maintain the vibration of.
Yes, it goes back to that loving observation piece where the shadow is there, and that's fine. The line between the shadow and the gift is so thin, and so it's really just a guidepost. It's just there, and you can realize it and say, oh, right, I got off track for a second. Let's go back over here. We'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like, you know, it's understanding that it's not a negative thing for us to experience our shadow. I think this is also kind of coming full circle to that 3-line and emotional authority type element of our conversation earlier, of going, it is okay for our shadow side of our gifts to pop up. Like, if anything, that is just an opportunity for us to go deeper and to understand why that's cropped up, what is pushing that button, what is bringing that to the surface, what is bubbling that up for me to have awareness of and to witness and to look at and go, oh, that's interesting that you're here today. Like, what, you know, like, let's learn from this. Let's take this opportunity to grow. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it helped me a lot too, because my conscious sign is gate 47, and that's the gate of oppression. That's the shadow of it. And I just related to it so much. I can think of so many times I felt so oppressed by my mind and trying to figure stuff out. And so it honestly freed me so much to know that. And now if I do feel any sort of pressure or oppression, then it's just, I'm kind of thankful. I'm like, oh, thanks for showing up. Great. Okay. And check back in with what's going on. And then I can switch gears. But okay, well, I just have to say, we should probably wrap it up, because otherwise it's like 5 hours and you probably have other stuff to do. So my cat is like right next to me snoring like crazy. So thank you. I absolutely.
You are so welcome. This has been amazing. Yeah, as you say, like, every time I get to have these sorts of conversations, it is always the same thing, that it's like, this could be, you know, a 3-4 part series of like talking about this stuff, because it is just always such a blessing to get to come and have conversations where it is diving into this at a level that we're talking about it in terms of like not only the learning, but to talk about things in a way that is the tangible and the reality based and the stuff like that. So yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Good. That is one of my goals, because I love hearing people talk about their design, and it helps me to integrate it a little more, but then also, you know, to help people feel less alone in their experiment and in their life. And then especially as mental projectors, and like, I just want to love on all the mental projectors.
I know it's such a huge thing. I know that I really at the start of my own journey really struggled to find resources that were mental projector focused. So there's any mental projectors listening, like, make sure to come and dive into both of our DMs, because we'll just be there to be like, welcome.
Yes, come say hi.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, tell us what services you have going on right now, what offerings you have, I should say, going on, and where we can find you.
Well, I am at Rose Totri on all the things, on Instagram, on Facebook. rosetodri.com is my website, and I'm guessing we can put this all in the show notes anyway, so we can add some links in terms of if you want to come and dip your toes into the human design and business world and being empowered to know a bit more. I've got lots of different free masterclasses and trainings you can come and do. I've got ones available for your energy type, your strategy, your authority, and your profile if you want to come and get into some specifics. And there's a discount code that you can come and get those for free, because again, my gate 45 is just like, come and be learning. And I also do those with a kind of Aquarian economy approach, where if you want to come and make a donation or shout me a coffee or whatever in return, you can do that as an option. But again, the accessibility thing is really important to me for just giving you resources you can learn about. And then, as I say, I have my Abundant as Fuck mini course now that is from that event that you can come and you can learn. And as I said, it's like 6+ hours of training and embodiment workbooks that you can come and get. And so I'm guessing we can maybe chuck a link in for that as well if people want to come and dive into that and really just like soak in all the human design embodiment goodness, because that was a huge focus of that course. So yeah, it's really just an absolute pleasure and honor to get to come and share it with people. And of course, there are all the other ways you can come and, you know, work with me as well, as we talked about in terms of like projectors and what we can be in that kind of energetic exchange around money for, which is important. But everything's there that you can easily browse around and explore. Everything I offer is in an evergreen capacity, so people can dive in their own time, anytime. So I just kind of like have the doors open to my Zen den, and you can wander on in and have a browse around and get a feel for how things are. I like people to come into my world and feel like they're kind of able to curl up on the couch with a good book. That's the vibe when you're in my world. So yeah, come on in if that's your vibe too.
Maybe that's why we get along so well.
Yeah, 100%. Preferably if there's some dogs snoozing on the couch with you as well, in my case.
Oh my gosh, your dogs. I love watching your dogs in the stories.
They don't get to come in for like podcast interviews, and they look at me like they're so not impressed that they don't get to come and snore in here while I'm on my podcast interviews.
So cute. Okay, well, thank you so much. Yes, we'll definitely put links down below for everything, and I'm just so grateful to you and your time and your wisdom.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Right, bye, y'all.